Have you ever wondered why kids seem fearless, teenagers are impulsive, and adults just want a nap? It's not just personality, it's brain development. The brain is constantly growing and changing, and today we're going to break down exactly what happens from childhood to adulthood. The human brain isn't fully developed at birth. In fact, it takes about 25 years for it to reach full maturity, 23 years for females. Different parts of the brain develop at different rates. For example, the brainstem and limbic system, which control basic survival functions and emotions, are fully operational at birth. But the frontal lobe, which is responsible for decision-making, planning, and impulse control, it's a work in progress. From birth to about age 6, the brain is in hyper-learning mode. Young kids are constantly soaking in new information, forming millions of neural connections every second. This is why children learn languages so easily, because their brains are built for it. The hippocampus, the brain's memory center, also grows rapidly during this time. That's why early childhood experiences can have a huge impact on a person's emotions and behaviors later on in life. It's also why children tend to ask so many questions and be so curious about how the world works. Now, let's talk about teenagers. If you've ever been one, or been around one, you know how unpredictable this stage can be. And guess what? It's all because of the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is the part responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and long-term planning. It's still under construction in teenage years. That's why teens are more likely to take risks, act on impulse, and have intense emotional reactions. Another key player during this stage? Dopamine. The teenage brain produces more dopamine than an adult brain, making rewards feel way more intense. This is why teenagers are more likely to seek out exciting and risky experiences. The thrill just hits differently when you're young. This is also why teens tend to be around screens or their phones more, since being around screens or phones is like a dopamine loop where it's just a constant giving of dopamine from that screen. So it's like a reward, and it feels way more intense than with adults, which is why they tend to get addicted to it really easily. By the time we hit our mid-20s, the frontal lobe finally finishes developing, making it easier to think critically, plan ahead, and control emotions. It's also when your neurotransmitters and your neurons, they send more complex messages to each other, which is why some mental health conditions like anxiety and depression tend to show up in adolescence and early adulthood. This is because it's a huge change for the brain, and the brain is still figuring out how to regulate itself. But here's the cool part. Even though the brain stabilizes in adulthood, it never stops changing. Thanks to neuroplasticity, we can continue learning, forming new habits, and strengthening neural pathways for life. So let's recap. The brain goes through major developmental stages: hyperlearning in childhood, impulsive thrill-seeking in teenage years, and full maturity in adulthood. But even as we grow, our brain remains adaptable. Now that we understand brain development, let's talk about emotions. In the next episode, we're going to be diving into the limbic system, which is the emotional powerhouse of the brain. See you there.